who's online. He's the commission chair of IUCN Species Survival Commission. Cécile Sabot, she's the head of Marine Ecology Lab at the Université Côte d'Azur. Hello, Cécile. Thanks for being here. Sonia Español, she's the executive director at Mary Foundation. Thank you, Sonia. And Omar Al-Atas, the head of environmental protection and regeneration at Red Sea Global. So, Don, if you can, you are going to be the first to present.
Okay, thank you so much.
You have the floor, Don. Go ahead.
Thank you. Very pleasure to be with you. Let me just share my screen. I have a brief presentation to share with you. Excellent. All right. A few days ago, I'm delighted to be here with you. We have a very short time, so I'll go through this quickly. A few days ago, 7 chairs of the UCN, we published this article in Crossroads. And the main theme that we want to focus on as chairs of the UCN during this COP is the climate change and biodiversity loss, two sides of the same coin. They're inseparable, interdependent, and mutually reinforcing. And you probably have heard this from other people. This COP is really fundamental for us to understand that biodiversity is both one of the main affected and one of the main solutions. Now, in terms of IUCN's contribution to monitoring species change and the impact of different threats, Red List of Threatened Species is our main tool. This is it is not a list. It's funny because the name threatened species is inaccurate. It really isn't a list, and it isn't a threatened species. There's a database with many species threatened and not threatened by many different threats. We have about 150,000 of these species documented on the red list nowadays. There's nothing like it anywhere in the world. And the unique element is the classification of species according to extinction risk. You can see there on the left of your screen the scale of extinction risk. I won't go into details of this, just to say on 11 December this year, just a couple of days from now, we will have the next update of the red list there. I invite you, it'll be at 17:45 in December and the UCN Pavilion. And you'll hear a little more about the most recent data that we have in climate change and its threats to biodiversity. Now, one of the tools that we use in the list is the Red List Index. This is a way to synthesize species and different geographic dimensions, taxonomic characteristics. Our most famous image, possibly about this, is the one you can see on your screen, where you can look at how different groups of species have changed their status, their average status over time. Corals there at the top of the screen, the ones that have declined most, a lot of them due to effects of climate change and changing conditions in the oceans. So climate change is on the red list. We'll have much more in the same the SSC Climate Change Specialist Group also produces all kinds of documents to help guide users and how to interpret climate change on the red list. Here on your screen, you will see some recent publications of them where they explain how climate change is considered and it's used to document the red list. Again, I invite you look into these publications if you have interest to explore this further. This is just an example of how climate change affects biodiversity here. You can see the Tepuis, these are very beautiful mountains in southern Venezuela. You can see some photos on the left. The one very specific characteristic of them is they have very steep sides. So as the climate warms, the vegetation mountains up, and then they have a very abrupt ending, flat mountains. It means that any vegetation, any species associated to these, and this happens in mountains around the world as well, these species, as they go up with climate change, they lose their habitat. There, of the 20-something massifs that form this bioregion in southern Venezuela, 11 of them predicted to lose 100% of their habitat with a 4-degree increase. And 18 of them would 90%. And the map that you can see there on the bottom right is the Chivanta Massif, which is the one that's going to suffer less of all the different massives. That one is still expected to lose about half of it, half its area with a 4-degree increase. Many species have documented changes in behavior, migratory patterns, and all kinds of indicators. These species are these indicators that reflect change in habitat and changes in their behavior. Lots of information. No, we don't have time to go into the details today here. Lots of information of this. I want to close not just with a final few thoughts on biodiversity as an ally to conservation, biodiversity as an ally in the fight against climate change. This has been recognized by the UN. One of the themes that we hear about a lot is reforestation, planting trees as a way to combat climate change, CO2 from the atmosphere, activities. And this is really great. You can see in this article published a couple of years ago, you can see of the 1 billion hectares of forest required to limit global warming to 1.c degrees by 2050. Most of this 1 billion is available in for restoration. So we have a big ally in nature, in trees, to combat climate change. There's not only plants, however. Other recent studies point at animals, both by, you can see there is say protection plus restoration. So protection of species that are already in the wild, restoration of species extinct somewhere or in low levels. This will increase the number of carbon sinks in the animal world. And this is not only restricted to land, but also to the sea. You can see whales and other creatures there on your screen. So restoring biodiversity, plants, animals on land and the sea are big allies for biodiversity conservation. And my final slide to show to you today is about it is not just about reforestation. It is not just about increasing the volumes and quantities of populations of animals and plants. There's good evidence that tree planting, like it says there on your screen, tree planting that is poorly planned and executed would actually increase CO2 emissions and have long-term deleterious impacts on biodiversity, landscapes, and livelihoods. I won't go into the whole detail of the 10 golden rules. Important keywords there on the left of your screen. On the one hand, protect forests that are uh, standing at the moment. Um, use Think of reforestation as one objective that maximizes multiple biodiversity targets simultaneously. Use local generation. If you're going to plant trees, then focus on threatened species, focus on native species. There are lots of very important rules. Currently, tree planting efforts like the Bond Challenge are not following. If you look around, tree planting is focused on exotic species such as pine and eucalyptus, and we need to shift that mindset. And I invite all of you. I'm so sorry that I can't join you in person, but I invite all of you, when you're thinking about species and the role of species in mitigating climate change, we try to make sure that both human biodiversity and climate targets are achieved simultaneously. So thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to hearing the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for your intervention. Very, very interesting. While you were showing the graphic, I was wondering, are we humans on the red list already? I hope
No,
not
we're
yet,
not.
right?
Well, this species is on the red list technically because it includes every species on Earth, even those that are not evaluated. But humans are a species that is increasing in abundance and expanding. So the opposite behavior of threat species.
Thank you very much. Cecile, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this panel. May I have a slide, please? So we will dive into ocean and I will talk about the decline of marine biodiversity. Thank you. So I will start just to briefly remind you that the biodiversity of marine species are very useful because uh, they are part of the habitats, and they are engineers of ecosystems, and they provide also a lot of socioeconomic services, and I will come back to that later. I don't know if it's working. Okay. First, how is climate change affecting marine biodiversity? So we can talk about rising temperature, but also rising acidification. And the problem is that all the both of them, temperature and acidity, are disturbing the marine ecosystems. And I chose to talk about two main examples. The first one is about heat waves that induce mass coral bleaching events. So you have here two pictures of corals, one in good health, and the other one you see that the symbiosis has been disrupted, and you can see that the coral is completely bleached. And the problem is that those bleached corals will probably die, um, we will see death of coral reefs. So, and for coral reefs, what is important is that every fraction of a degree matters. So, for example, in uh, tropical sea, sorry, rising temperature of only 1.5 degree will induce up to 70% to 90% of coral bleaching. And if we raise temperatures by 2 degrees, we will induce bleaching about 99% of corals. So it's huge, it's massive mortality of corals. And because corals are engineers for ecosystems and provide habitats for a lot of marine animals, so it will impact the ocean, and it will impact marine biodiversity at the whole. And the second example is about migration of animals, migration of species. And I will take the example of fish species. So you have here a picture of the changes in Mediterranean fisheries maximum catch potential. And so this picture is about under the pessimist climate scenario. So we can take the scenario of 4.5 or the scenario SCP 8.5. And under the SCP 8.5, you can see that we have a lot of small pelagic fishes that will move from Mediterranean Sea to Atlantic, or just be removed from the Mediterranean Sea. And the catches may decrease by the end of the century, they may decrease up to 75% regarding some of the catching scenario. And for other one, for example, for fixed net and traps, we will see a decrease of uh, 50 to 75%. So it's huge decrease of catches, and of course, this will impact fisheries and economic of fisheries. Um, yeah, and so we can of course we can focus on endangered species and threatened species, for example, top predators. So we already talk about albatrosses and whales and turtles and so on. But of course, if we impact marine ecosystem, the whole food web will be impacted. So we can focus on top predators, but all other species also are impacted. So it's easier to have data about top predators, but we have to remind that all of these groups of the taxonomic groups are impacted by climate change. And we also have to focus, we also have to study other species and not also threatened species. And for example, we have also to remind that almost 97% of animals are invertebrates. So those those taxonomy groups are also very important, and we have also to acquire data to all these groups to be able to deal with the climate change impact and to have a, evaluation of the whole marine biodiversity changes, and of course human are on top of that. So yeah, maybe human are already endangered species. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Cecile, for your intervention. Um, Mr. Omar Al Atas, you have the floor for your presentation, please.
Well, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be among such an esteemed panelist. Um, I'll share the story with a twist. I'll share the story of an action on the ground. I'm part of the development company called Red Sea Global, that is uh, part of developing what we call regenerative tourism within Saudi Arabia. That's part of the Red Sea. Under the Red Sea Global, we have two of our developments, which one is the Red Sea development and the other one is Amala. When we first visited that location that was assigned for the development, we were just amazed by how beautiful it is and the amount of biodiversity. So that put on us kind of the responsibility of how we can develop in an area without having a negative impact. So, what really has happened, what we have found, which is the twist, we have found that we are dealing with two things that may have an impact. One for sure will have an impact, which is the climate change that we have to address all the time. And the other part is development. I don't want to talk too much about what has been done since the beginning of this project, from the marine spatial planning for the proper design so it won't impact the environment and these species. We have left 75% of the islands untouched, although that we are capable of developing all of them. We have identified 9 islands that will be considered as reserves as well. And we have put to ourselves a path under from which if we develop more, we could impact the environment negatively. So when we visited that location and we started that kind of the development, we wanted to make sure what we are dealing with. And that's why we have started our baseline assessment. In order to be able to tell what is happening due to the climate change or any human activities or any development, we have to know exactly what we are dealing with. That's why it took us 2.5 years just to establish a baseline assessment. So now we totally understand what we have, what we are blessed with, and what are the challenges that we have to mitigate and also to deal with. With all that in mind, we know what's the coral, what is the density, what is the type, what is the challenges that we are facing, which one type over the other. There are even some studies to show the resilience of coral in our area to heat, which is something that we have to keep in mind that is part of our monitoring. We know the different kind of species, the different habitats as well. And from day one, we have set to ourselves goal. And that is the key point. We have put to ourselves 30% net conservation benefit that would be reached through multiple biodiversity enhancement efforts. So we have plans of under our regenerative approach of what needs to be enhanced in both terrestrial and marine for species and habitats. The responsible thing is we cannot just jump into adopting a certain technique or a technology or a methodology that's been implemented and maybe successful somewhere in the world and just take it, we imitate it, and we implement it right away. Our environment is different, our challenges are different. So we have done the responsible thing. We have, and again, I'm blessed with an incredible team. The message to them all the time the sky is not even the limit for your innovation. Go look around, find to whom we can collaborate with, bring innovation into what needs to be done to protect our precious environment. And through our journey, we are implementing different types of, I would say, pilots, assessments, and proof of concepts. And through our wide things monitoring system that we have established in our whole area, we are capable to monitor the progress and the success rates of everything that we are implementing on the ground. In 1 year, we have started more than 25 projects on the ground. From these part of that is related, I would say, to the birds, to the turtles, some of the parts of the fish, as well as the birds and the corals. And through these all projects, we are monitoring their progress. And hopefully, with the time, we're going to move into the second stage, which is the scaled up efforts. As we speak now, we are developing a state of the art lab where we're going to be using it for all the propagation for the corals, for all the fragmentations, for all the coral gardening. And I have lots of subject matter experts from all over the world who are helping us to do the right thing on the ground and also to develop capacities. This is something that we always have to keep in mind and we cannot ignore it. In order to make any project anywhere in the world sustainable and lasting, we have to ensure proper capacity building and building the proper team as we go. So also, I encourage you all to visit the Saudi Green Initiative, where we are part of that these activities as well, and we are a proud owners of 7 of these initiatives, and they vary from what needs to be done as part of the enhancement efforts, as part of announcing for the marine protected area. The marine protected area by itself, it took us around 2 years to be able to accumulate and collect all the data that is necessary that helped us into assigning what needs to be done and how can we ensure that fishing doesn't have a negative impact on the environment, but also at the same time, how to ensure that the fishermen as well are not getting impacted. So we have done also the responsible thing where we have met with all of them from our the surrounding areas and we have worked together hand in hand into alternative livelihood plans for their kids for and also for themselves as well. There are many projects, as I said, I don't have the time to be able to go through all of them and the 25 projects that we have. But again, this is what we really need to do. Unfortunately, if you go, you'll see lots of planning, lots of talks. We should do action on the ground. This is what it really needs to be done. And the action has to start now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing all the work that you do on behalf of Red Sea Global. Thank you very much. You just mentioned something that it's really important, not only addressed to climate change, but also addressed to the community through the capacity building. So, how do you address to this topic in general when you face the projects?
The challenge is many of whom they want to be part of this social development. They go and impose on these communities what they see fit. That's just wrong. What needs to be done, we have to take our time to understand their need, you know exactly what they have. We should not be part of changing a culture. We should be helping that culture to develop and improve and also for them to satisfy all of their needs that needs to be done. So we have done multiple surveys. We have been busy for the last 2.5 years meeting with all the local communities, know exactly what are the challenges, what do they need, what do they actually have in mind. And not only this, we want this kind of progress to be somehow have kind of that of a negative impact upon all of them. Sometimes it hurts when you bring someone from this local community and then you incorporate them into your projects where they feel that they are dealing with a giant. So what we got to do is we just through the proper education, we bring them little by little, we let them be involved with all the activities on the ground. I'm proud to be also working with 15 of the local community, whom I call now my precious environmental technicians. So they are helping us because they understand the area better than anyone. But all what they wanted and they needed is someone to listen to them and also to help them to achieve some of their goals. Now, some of them, they are part of our core enhancement. Others are part of the birds enhancement and habitats as well. And others are part of the terrestrial and many more. And as we speak now, we are in the process of also getting 15 more that will be part of our what we call the environmental rangers that are going to be responsible for the terrestrial. This is what I call a lasting sustainable ecosystem that got to be created.
Thank you very much for this explanation. And I believe that Sonia, he gave you a little bit the floor for your presentation. So go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this panel, the discussion. I want to talk about the work that we're doing in Mary Foundation in Chile. Mary Foundation have been working for more than 12 years on the conservation of strategic ecosystems for climate change mitigation in Chile. In all of this year, the experience that we obtained in the territory has allowed to us to establish our own work methodology, but always following the UCM methodology. For a long time, we had an extractive vision of nature. We have also listened to many years that nature is the environment that surrounds us, always putting the human in the center. But in Mary Foundation, we are working a lot in trying to change this paradigm, and the ecosystemic vision invite us to reconnect with nature and change our relationship with it, recognizing the natural values of the territory. So it's important to understand that our participation is like one more element of an interconnected system. In this interconnected system, humans are affected by the process that occur in the nature. Here. Knowing how important is to protect nature for the consequence of the climate change and with the need for urgent action, Mary works with umbrella species. This is because the umbrella species, or we need this concept because the conservation and protection of these species indirectly affects the conservation and protection of other species within their ecosystem. So with each species, we can help us to know the state of the health of the ecosystems and monitor the impact of climate change over time. The geographical characteristics, of Chile converts this country in a unique natural laboratory in the world. It's a biodiversity hotspot. The methodology implemented by Mary is based on building conservation plans for each of the elementary reserves that we have in Chile. In these plans, key species conservation targets were detected. This includes whales and also forest or astronomy. In this picture, we can see Chile, and the points, the green points, are the three elemental reserves that we have. One in San Pedro Atacama in latitude 22, other in the middle of the Chile in latitude 23 in Santiago, and the last is in the latitude 44 in the south, in Patagonia, as Milimoyo. And in each reservoir, we have this conservation plan, and we are working uh, almost in all of these species. When we have this methodology, when these species are defined, their anthropogenic dangers are also identified. And with this, we work along three lines. First, we develop scientific research to know the status of the species. Also, we develop the environment education programs that are then implemented in schools, and also in different trainings with the government or other institution, in order to try that all the sector and all the society knows the value of these species, because in so many cases they don't know about the present or the value that they have. And with this, we want to try to convince them the necessity to contribute to the conservation. And finally, we carry out advocacy to promote public policy that allows the protection of these species and their ecosystem. And now I want to share with you some examples of our work. So I want to start with whales, with the ocean, because whales has play a fundamental role in the ocean by capturing more than 33 tons of carbon in their body, and by producing essential nutrients that the ocean needs to proliferation the phytoplankton, which is ultimately generates more than 30% the oxygen that we consume. In Chile, we carry out a scientific expedition that allows to us to identify the health of these whales, but also their ecosystem. Understanding that they emit an unique sounds in the world, and the first damage that they can suffer is about the marine traffic. Together with the Chilean government and international and national institutions, we developed the project, the Blue Boat Initiative, in 2020, with aims to reduce the collisions by alerting vessels in real time to the presence of whales. So we're trying to connect the science with the environment, or in this case, on the ocean programs in education, but also the advocacy, how the all of the knowledge that we have, we can implement in a specific project. Other example, in this case, in the land ecosystem that we study is, sorry, sí, yes, this. Another example of conservation through understanding that species are indication of the consequence of climate change is the work that we are done with the Andean condor in the central region of Chile. This animal, the condor, is an indicator of a dynamic and healthy ecosystem because it's in the top of the food chain. The Andean condor is distributed along the Andes from Venezuela to Tierra del Fuego in the south of Chile and Argentina. And actually, the most numerous population is found between Chile and Argentina, and they travel in the bay for the two countries. The condor is particularly vulnerable because they live in a vast territory. So currently, these populations are declining due to lack of food, as a result of the lack of livestock consequence by the growth of the cities. This animal also can live in land and this is a really big problem because make it vulnerable to poisoning. In Mary Foundation, together with other partners, we work on condor recovery, and we release educational programs and also scientific research. Since Mary Foundation created the first condor pre-release in Chile in 2019, 12 condors have been released, and we can monitoring their movements and the state of the health with GPS. And finally, other example is about flamingos. There are 6 species of flamingos in the world. In Chile, we have 3 of these species. Flamingos are animals that inhabit in the high Andean lagoons, which are wetlands with complex ecosystem that maintain very specific conditions for life. In Chile, we can find these flamingos in Atacama Desert, but also in the south. In addition to their ecosystem value, these animals have a great value for the culture, the regional culture, and tourism in the area, being even more relevant their conservation and environment education. Mary Foundation, together with other partners, have been working since 2021 to develop research and environment education programs to make visible how the presence of these flamingos in these lagoons is an indicator of the condition with are highly vulnerable to climate change and anthropic activities. Under the methodology of Mary, we also put GPS and we are monitor their movements or the health of or the status of the health of this animal. And all the information that we call it, not only for flamingo, but all the species, for us is very important because it's always available to the community. We always do material for the school, but also for the decision makers, trying to complete the knowledge in the scientific paper, for example, but also with educational guide that we can give to the people. We also have many documentals, exhibitions, or instance that this in the COP when we are talking about these species, about Chile, in trying to help the contribution to have better decisions in conservation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. You mentioned, Sonia, all the educational work that Mary Foundation does. Omar mentioned the community and capacity building. And what about Université Côte d'Azur? How do you address to the community?
So we also work with community and especially with fishermen. And for example, we are working on the new marine MPA in the urban area of Nice. So it will be a huge challenge to create an MPA in urban area. But yeah, it's on the way. So it will be normally created in 2 years from now, and we are working on that since 2 years also. So it's a huge work, and to have all stakeholders and all communities on board. And of course, we also have awareness and actions to be able to promote that action. And we are also working on with MPA managers to provide science, to provide training also to new management protocols and so on. So that's also a way to improve management on this on this MPA and yeah, new areas.
Thank you, Cecile. I open the floor for questions in case there's any. No? Okay. Yes, of course.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. My name is Carolina. I am from Eco House Global. That's an NGO in Argentina. I'm the neighbor of the Mary Foundation. Um, and at the moment, I think it's a huge challenge because I was walking around this huge event and seeing all the possibilities of financing for carbon markets, for example, and decarbonization. But I don't see a clear direction on financing for biodiversity because the actual possibility of getting a profit out of it is quite complicated. So, how do you see, on your experience, the possibility of trying to empower biodiversity because it's absolutely important for our survival and for the survival of many other species? I mean, for climatic justice for everybody, and not only humans. Um, so, how do you see this challenge, or how do you face this challenge on trying to track financing for supporting biodiversity without this concept of getting any economical profit directly? Because, of course, that if we support the health of an ecosystem, then we get oxygen and water and every natural resource that any economic um, activity requires, that any cultural community, like the importance of the culture for communities, exactly as you said before. We really work on trying to connect people with the places that they inhabit, and the importance of those places, but we really see a disconnection between the financing sectors and these natural places. So that was my
Thank you. John, would you like to go?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Carolina. That's a very important question. If you look at previous.
Do you mind speaking a bit louder, please?
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
Is this okay? Is this better? I just got as close as I can to my screen. Well, if you look at previous COPs, you will see that biodiversity was not even on the agenda. And the fact that here you will have heard many people speaking about the connection between biodiversity and climate, both as a cause and as a benefit, as a sync mechanism, that has changed a lot. And I think that you're right, Carolina, that we tend to not think that biodiversity is, in fact, the generator of those financial benefits, such as carbon credits. So, speaking more about the connection between the two and making it more clear in people's minds that the best way to obtain those credits is through biodiversity, is through increasing sinks in animals and plants, is about planting the right tree in the right place at the right time. If we continue to internalize that and make sure that people are aware, and the funding sources and the grant givers and the World Bank and so on, then we'll be closer. But we're getting there, and it's certainly much more on the agenda now than it ever was before. So thank you.
John. Thank you, John. You're so right. It's in the agenda at least now. Would you like to go?
Thank you. We have some former students from Université Côte d'Azur that have created a startup. The name is Eversea. And the aim of this startup is to build a platform to be able to link funding bodies with people that have projects to save biodiversity and so on. And first, to your right, John, we have to be able to determine how carbon credit we have on these areas, for example, by ecosystem, and then what impact have the climate change of this ecosystem, the same ecosystem, to be able to determine which amount of money we need to build project and to tackle climate change. So that's a huge problem. Yes. Thank you.
I think that is obvious that we have this connection between biodiversity and climate change. For example, we have a COP for climate change, another COP for biodiversity. So it's a real disconnection. No, in Mary Foundation, we believe that probably if we can put together in a working table or in a space like this, the public sector and the private sector and the civil society, we can have a meaning of a possibility to do something best that the thing that we have now. And in a specific way, in 2020, we, with the Monetary Fund, we develop scientific research about the value of the ecosystem service that a baleen whale can bring to all of us. And with this, we don't want to put a value of for a whale. No, we want to try to a change of the paradigm for the decision maker to understand that the biodiversity, the ecosystem, can help us for mitigate the climate change, no? And maybe this could be, I don't know, a key to try to put in the conversation to decision maker to help the solution, no? But for me, it's impossible to think in a solution if not the sector, public sector, private sector are together, because we need all fighting with the situation. No?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for asking this question. It's definitely necessary to address it. Biodiversity enhancement, any work on the ground comes with a price and comes with a very high price. Nothing is for free. So what always we have to keep in mind, not to fall into the trap of how can we just initiate something that we'll be very happy about, then over the time it may fade away or stop. How to ensure that what needs to be done is lasting and sustainable. And that takes collaborative work of the whole world, definitely, but also needs the whole movement of a nation. What's being done now in Saudi Arabia, even though that I represent the, the regenerative tourism part of that, but the whole ecosystem is now moving into what needs to be done to fund all work on the ground. But also at the same time, what needs to be done to ensure the sustainability. Also, such an example is the creation of the environmental fund. We know that there are activities that is happening on the ground that may have a negative impact on the environment. They got to pay. That money that they pay, where it goes into what needs to be done for the enhancement of the environment. And now, over the time, that balance would lean more toward the positive part of what got to be done for the enhancement and the protection of the environment. We are now starting, I would say, not as the usual trend where you have to crawl, walk, and run. We don't have the time. We need to start running, all of us, but also at the same time, we have to be very careful. And that's why this point of what got to be done to ensure a lasting and a financially sustainable system to ensure that whatever action happening in the ground that will last for the future generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions, and thank you, the speakers, and John online for participating. Uh, we'll see you next. Thank you.